Maya Thorne was the kind of person who seemed to see the world in colors others missed. At just 22, she was already making a name for herself in wildlife photography circles, known for her deep respect for animals and the boldness of her lens. Raised in the forests of British Columbia, Maya didn't just photograph nature, she connected with it. Her social media was a mosaic of misty woods, rare birds mid-flight, and portraits of predators captured with astonishing calm. But it wasn't just the beauty of her images that drew people in, it was her philosophy. She often wrote, "If you want to understand something wild, don't chase it, listen to it." That mindset earned her a modest but loyal following. She was thoughtful, grounded, but quietly driven to capture the kinds of moments most people only dreamed of witnessing. Which is why what happened that day shocked so many. Maya wasn't a thrill seeker. She wasn't reckless. But in the wrong place at the wrong time, even the most careful soul can make a decision that costs everything. On a quiet, sun-drenched morning in mid-July, Maya Thorne joined a guided tour at one of Canada's most respected wildlife sanctuaries. Located just 2 hours outside Vancouver, the privately run reserve was home to a variety of rescued and rehabilitated animals, including wolves, bears, and several species of big cats. Maya had been there before, years ago as a teenager, but this visit felt different. She had recently been accepted into a prestigious wildlife filmmaking program and was quietly working on a new photography series exploring the duality of beauty and danger in apex predators. This visit, she told her friend over text the night before, was more research than relaxation. The sanctuary itself was expansive and stunning, thick groves of pine and spruce, rolling hills, and custom enclosures that simulated the animals' natural environments. Signs were posted frequently along walkways. Respect the barrier. Do not enter. Animals are not tame. That day, the tigers, especially the male Bengal tiger named Rama, were unusually visible. Resting near the far edge of their enclosure, they looked calm, almost sleepy in the heat. To tourists, it was a rare chance for a perfect photo. To Maya, it may have seemed like an irresistible opportunity to add something breathtaking to her project. The tour group was small, 6 people, a local guide named Ian, and Maya, wearing her usual faded field jacket with her DSLR strapped tightly to her chest. According to Ian, everything proceeded as normal for the first half hour. Maya took notes, asked intelligent, respectful questions, snapped a few pictures from behind the designated safe zone. There was nothing out of the ordinary, until the group moved forward and she didn't. Ian assumed she'd lingered to get a better angle. He called to her once. She waved him off, smiling politely, signaling she'd catch up. What none of them knew, what no one saw in real time, was that Maya had quietly slipped behind a maintenance fence just around the enclosure's bend. That fence had been closed off for staff access only. The lock had been recently damaged during a storm, and the repair hadn't been logged yet. From that gap, it was a short, sloped path down to a camera blind, an old, disused one. From there, she would have had a nearly unobstructed view of Rama and his mate from just a few meters away.
No barriers.
No glass.
No wires.
What made her do it? We'll never know for sure. Maybe it was artistic instinct. Maybe she just wanted to get closer for a moment and step right back. But in sanctuaries, as in the wild, proximity can be fatal. If this story gripped you, press on red subscribe button and turn on notifications for more details. Maya Thorne had always walked the line between admiration and respect when it came to predators. She didn't idolize them. She studied them. She knew their strength, their instincts. But that morning, as she crouched behind a rusted service fence, something shifted. Perhaps it was the stillness of the tigers, or the echo of silence around her. A rare moment, undisturbed by footsteps or chatter. A moment photographers dream of. The access path was narrow, lined with tall grass and pine needles. The slope dipped quickly into shadow. From where she stood, the old camera blind sat about 20 feet away, its wooden walls still intact despite being decommissioned. It had once been used by researchers, but no longer. Still, it provided a clear line of sight. Too good to resist. Maya didn't hesitate. Witnesses later described how, just minutes earlier, she'd quietly detached from the group without alarm. She didn't appear nervous. She moved with a kind of practiced calm. Her DSLR was ready. Her phone was in her back pocket. As she slipped into the blind, she began taking slow, measured shots. First of the surrounding foliage, then of the pair of tigers sprawled in the late morning light. Rama's eyes were closed. His ears flicked occasionally at insects. The female was stretched along a sunlit patch of grass. Maya lowered her camera. She reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone. Turned the front camera on. She leaned just slightly out the window of the blind, raising her arm to frame the shot. The selfie was never posted, but the image, recovered later, told enough. In the photo, her expression is composed but eager. The tiger in the background is no longer resting. Rama's eyes are locked on the movement. His ears are forward. His posture is raised. A silent shift, imperceptible in the moment, but clear in hindsight. In her final seconds inside that blind, Maya likely didn't even hear him move. Tigers are nearly silent hunters. Their footfalls evolved for stealth. She may have felt the vibration in the earth, or seen a flicker of movement in her periphery. By the time she turned, he was already halfway across the clearing.
Panic set in.
She backed away from the window. There are signs she tried to climb out the back of the blind, but the door had collapsed inward from years of decay. She was trapped. Ramos charged and stopped. He struck the side of the blind with his weight. The structure cracked, splintered. Maya screamed. That scream, witnesses say, was the first indication something was wrong. The sanctuary was supposed to be a controlled environment, safe for the animals and safe for the people who came to observe them. But nature doesn't operate by our rules. It doesn't pause for panic. It doesn't freeze for mistakes. Maya Thorne had just seconds. When Rama charged, the wooden blind where she stood couldn't withstand the force of a 500-pound predator. The structure splintered, one wall collapsing inward. Emergency responders later described claw marks nearly 6 inches deep carved through the timber. From the group trail above, several guests reported hearing the sound, a crack like a tree snapping, followed by a scream that was sharp, short, and silenced too soon. Ian, the sanctuary guide, turned and ran back toward the tiger enclosure, radioing for backup. But the path down to the blind was dense, choked with brush, and not marked for public access. The seconds ticked on. By the time staff arrived, Rama had already withdrawn. Maya lay behind the shattered blind, motionless. She had suffered catastrophic injuries, massive trauma to her torso and head. A tranquilizer was administered within minutes, but it was too late. Surveillance footage later confirmed what the group hadn't seen, a figure slipping behind the old fence. A shadow near the tiger pen. The unmistakable silhouette of Maya Thorne lowering herself down the embankment alone. Her phone was recovered beside her, still unlocked. The last image on the screen, a selfie. She had managed to capture the moment, though it would never be shared. The image blurred, slightly crooked, but heartbreakingly clear, her face bright with quiet triumph. And just behind her, barely out of focus, a tiger already standing, already watching. Authorities launched a formal investigation, though the sanctuary itself was not found at fault. The damaged lock on the maintenance gate had been scheduled for repair, and the area Mayor entered was strictly off-limits, with warnings posted. But what alarmed everyone wasn't just what she had done, it was how calm and purposeful she appeared. This wasn't a thrill-seeker acting on impulse. It was a calculated choice made in silence, away from others, with the intention of capturing a once-in-a-lifetime image. In the end, the lines between art and danger blurred. Too much, too fast. And the cost was irreversible. Rama, the tiger, was not euthanized. Experts agreed he had acted purely on instinct. He had perceived an intrusion, a breach of his territory. His reaction wasn't cruel. It was natural. Maya had loved these animals. She'd dedicated years of study to understanding them. But even she, in that moment, misjudged the rules of their world. Sometimes, wild means wild. And even a moment of quiet confidence can end in irreversible tragedy. The news of Maya Thorne's death spread rapidly, first through local media, then across international headlines. Student killed after sneaking into tiger enclosure. Selfie turns deadly for Canadian wildlife photographer. Tragedy at conservation reserve raises safety questions. But beneath the headlines were the people who knew her.
Friends.
Professors. A grieving family. Her mother, Elena, spoke to the press a week later, tears stiff in her throat as she clutched her daughter's favorite camera strap in her hands. She wasn't reckless, Elena said. She respected nature more than anyone I've ever known. This wasn't some act of ego. It was a moment of miscalculation. And it cost her everything. The sanctuary shut down for 2 weeks following the incident. During that time, new policies were drafted. Maintenance gates were replaced. Old structures near predator zones were dismantled. But what lingered most was the public reaction. On one side, people mourned a bright, passionate young woman who died chasing beauty. On the other, critics pointed fingers, accusing her of arrogance, of ignorance, of valuing a photo over her life. The truth was somewhere in the middle. Mayer wasn't an adrenaline junkie. But in the age of instant validation, likes, shares, viral fame, it's hard not to wonder how much pressure even thoughtful creators feel to capture more. Her final image was never released publicly, but investigators confirmed its existence. A single photo, a soft smile, a tiger standing in the background. The last picture. In online forums, photographers debated her decision. Was it brave or foolish? But her colleagues knew the answer wasn't that simple. As one wildlife filmmaker put it, there's a very thin line between awe and danger in this work. Mayer loved that line. And sometimes, the line moves when you least expect it. A memorial was held 3 weeks after her death, in the forest near her family's home. Her father read from one of her journals. The wild doesn't owe us anything. And if we're lucky, we get to witness it without being swallowed by it. In a strange, poetic way, Mayer died doing what she loved. But the tragedy lay in how unnecessary her death truly was. She had talent. She had time. She had a future. All stolen by a single decision, a few unauthorized steps toward a subject she thought she understood. The aftermath wasn't just about safety barriers and policies. It was about questioning why we risk so much for validation. Why even the most careful among us still stumble when wonder clouds caution. And why sometimes a split second between yes and no is the only difference between art and obituary. In the months following Maya Thorne's death, the wildlife community, photographers, filmmakers, conservationists, rallied together to preserve her legacy, not just in memory but in education. The sanctuary, where the incident occurred, renamed one of their scholarship programs the Mayer Thorne Fellowship for Ethical Wildlife Documentation. It provides grants to young photographers who demonstrate not only technical skill, but respect for boundaries, both environmental and personal. Her family, still reeling from the shock, poured their grief into something meaningful. They founded the Thorne Line Project, an online initiative aimed at educating aspiring content creators about the risks of unsafe photography, especially in wilderness settings. Its motto? Some lines aren't meant to be crossed. Workshops sprang up in universities. Conservation courses began to include modules on digital culture, social pressure, and the psychological risks of viral chasing. Maya's story became a cautionary tale, not to shame her, but to wake others up. And quietly, across social media, the tone began to shift. Hashtags like #RespectTheWild and #ShootSafe started trending. Her name lived on, not in infamy, but as a reminder. A young woman who didn't die for fame, but for a moment of wonder she thought was safe. Journalists revisiting the story found something remarkable. The people who had once blamed her began to soften. Her final photo, though never released, was described in tribute articles with solemn reverence. A moment frozen forever. One that she never got to share. What resonates most isn't just the tragedy of Maya's death, but the ordinariness of her decision. How many of us would do the same, given the opportunity? How many of us have stepped a little too close, leaned over a barrier, ignored a sign for a better shot? Her legacy asks us to think before we act. To remember that animals are not props. That natural beauty doesn't belong to us. And that behind every breathtaking photo lies a choice, to honor the wild or gamble against it. Today, Maya's work lives on in galleries, textbooks, and virtual exhibitions. Her journals, filled with sketches and poetic reflections, have been published in a book titled Where the Light Falls. In its final pages, she wrote, "The wild is not mine to tame. I'm only here to witness it. Quietly, briefly, fully. And perhaps that's the lesson. That some beauty is meant to be admired from afar. That some fences are not meant to be crossed. And that in the pursuit of the perfect shot, we must never lose sight of the line between reverence and risk." Maya Thorne crossed that line, not out of arrogance, but awe. And her story will echo in the minds of every lens turned toward the wild from now on.